Is this thing on? Hello? Yeah, okay, I see a light. Hello, and welcome to another year in review. It's been quite an eventful year, as it's not just been one game or two games, but we're gonna be talking about three games this year, so there's a lot on the platter to talk about. If you managed to make it this far, congratulations for surviving. Well done. You get to rot this now, I guess. But yeah, without further ado, we have a lot to go over, so let's get right into it. So, this is Eugen Systems in 2021. To start off the year, they talked about some of their plans for the upcoming year, such as new maps, such as the urban map, the 10v10 map, as well as just changing up some of the existing maps. They're going to redo all of the tank and heavy gun weapon ranges to be a little bit more stacked, so a 45mm Russian anti-tank gun can't shoot 2 bloody kilometers. Also improving the army general, and they've announced a new History Pass expansion, not included with the History Pass DLC, but this time it will be the Burning Baltics, focused on the Baltics region, which will be a bit more different, as the Germans will be the ones on the offensive this time. It would release a patch which would fix the APCR exploit and also add the invite code system for inviting all friends into lobbies. They would release the third Nemesis DLC, Battle of Rimini, with the 2nd New Zealand and the 1st Fallschirmjäger, and the 2nd New Zealand would pretty much take over 3rd Canadian and Corliss Commonwealth divisions. And also, Karma would win this Season 4 of the SD League. In March, we had to vote for the 5th Nemesis DLC, and Raid on Devar would be the winner. Good pick, guys. And I'm sure we'll see this DLC come out sometime soon. But also, Wargamer Dragon was finally released on the Epic Store, and to celebrate, they actually gave out the game for free for the next few days. This means that the player count would rise dramatically during this time, as there is now more meat for the meat grinder to go up against the Finn, Pole, and Yugoslav stacked lobbies. And because of this rise in popularity, Warchat also got quite a bit active during this time, one of the last bastions of free speech you could imagine. And so Eugen Systems had to actually moderate it until they forgot to a few days later. But yeah, it seems it's all kind of out of the blue why they're doing so much support for Wargamer Dragon for all of a sudden. What? So, yeah, it's honestly caught me completely off guard when I first saw it, but a game which hasn't had an update for 5 years is getting a new DLC. South Africa is being added to Wargamer Dragon. And honestly, pretty cool faction to pick out of anything to add, and over the coming months they would release a lot of dev blogs detailing the South African Defence Force and the units you expect to see in Wargame Dragon for them. In April they would announce another large DLC pack for SD2, the tribute to the liberation of Italy, adding some new Italian divisions as well as some more Western Front divisions into the game. But this won't come out for any time soon, and over the year they would pretty much just showcase in small chunks some of the new units and divisions which will be added. And also this month, Burning Baltics was finally released. It came with the new Army General campaign, the new 10v10 map, Tannenberg, which is actually a pretty good map and also works really well in 4v4s. They would finally add the combat range rework and improve efficient shot. 2-man flamethrowers were nerfed, half-tracks were nerfed, and there's also finally a jet plane in the game. It's not an ME-262, but the Ardo is still a pretty cool plane, I'll live with that. And also Gonzo would win this Season 5 of the SD League. In June, Steel Division 2 would take up less hard drive space. My SSD says thank you. In July, the Army General Co-op mode was finally released, as well as the Force Nemesis DLC Storm and Toulon. It'd also be some new balance changes along with this, such as LMGs having minimum range, unless you're certain LMGs, STGs and PPSHs were nerfed, and finally the Hungarian helmets were fixed. Woo! Yay! I can play the Hungarian divisions now. And yeah, that's pretty much the only thing which happened this month. Over the rest of the summer, not a whole lot would be happening as Eugene took out August holiday. Those lucky French. In September, a literal illiterate man would win the SD League Season 6, but more importantly than that, the South African Defence Force was finally released for Wargame Red Dragon. And considering the previous track record with Wargame DLCs, they did a pretty good job of making sure this wasn't power creep nonsense. They have some new fancy toys and a lot of very fast vehicles, but South Africa is not overpowered in any stretch of their imagination. They can be really good, but they require a really good player to actually make the most out of them, as you can't just spam super heavies and win. It's all about micro, maneuver, and using your speed to outmaneuver your opponent, which is very different from a lot of the other nations which are in the game. They're a lot of fun, but you have to be very good to get the most out of them, so great job, Eugen. You really kicked it out of the ballpark with this one. But also with this DLC release, they brought in a bunch of balance changes as well, which is still pretty nuts. This is 5 years since the last balance change at the end of 2016. Anyway, they buffed the Canadian Highlanders, they nerfed some super heavy tank availability, they nerfed AMX-10RC as well as the Kernast, they buffed Eastern Bloc, they nerfed the availability of Finpo. Red Dragons also saw some major buffs, making Red Dragon motorized pretty good. Finland and Yugoslavia in general were nerfed, and most importantly, Mod Schuchen's BMP1 was brought back down to 10 points, finally making Mod Schuchen's great again. So for a while, one of the big complaints for Steel Division 2 has been the maps, or really the lack of good maps in my personal opinion. In October, they would make an announcement that they're going to be adding a new map called Costa Rica. They're also going to be making some variations on Tannenberg to allow it to be played in smaller variations, and that oh so elusive urban map was cancelled, right? Because making maps is hard. They would also release some historical / balance changes for some of the divisions. For example, the Russians, they would make major changes to the F-22 / HIS-3 artillery guns. They would add 25mm anti-aircraft guns to certain Russian divisions, and they would also redo the T-30-45s, essentially the 1944 model, losing their APCR. Tarzalex Icon was changed, and Lovas would get better AT. In November, there were some balance changes, such as Molotovs finally getting nerfed, anti-aircraft is buffed, fighter bombers were nerfed, and recon planes were given drone-style UAV thermal vision, allowing them to spot across the entire map. This would be fixed later. It also would buff some of the less popular divisions. Also, mod maker extraordinaire Mr. Crisp would announce a new mod, Stormfront Ost 1941, adding in early Operation Barbarossa divisions into the game. Frankly, his previous mod, Red Storm 44, was fantastic. It's a great mod to play. I definitely have much more fun playing that mod compared to vanilla. The problem is you do need all the DLCs to play it, but that's more of a Eugen thing. He doesn't really have control over that. But honestly, I really hope the best for him in regards to Stormfront Ost. I really would love to see some early war divisions into the game, and frankly, from what I've been talking about it with him, it definitely changed the dynamic a bit, as the Germans would be the more lighter, aggressive, kind of spam divisions, while the Russians would have like the bigger, scarier, heavier tanks with the KV-1s and T-34s. So we'll just have to see how it goes down. So in December, they would release a free DLC, Lucky 13, adding 2 divisions which didn't make it into the previous Nemesis votes, such as Panzer Division Tatra, which is a really bloody good division, great medium tank spam, and great infantry spam, meaning a really good 1v1 division. And also Task Force Butler, which is a pretty fun, flavorful division with French and American units. They would announce Wargame 4, and also they made a patch which made the Graz anti-aircraft unit pretty useless. I'm not too surprised they are coming out with another Cold War game. I mean, with the previous Wargame release earlier this year, I definitely think they're just testing the waters to see just how much interest there still is in the franchise. But anyway, it's technically a new franchise called Raw in Order, or Warno, or whatever you want to bloody call it. But from what we've seen so far in the pictures and what they've told us, it pretty much looks like Wargame 4, but with some Steel Division quality of life improvements. It's going to be division-based rather than nation-based, which frankly I'm pretty happy about. It means you can make more interesting thematic decks. It's Definitely, I think, a big improvement over just the general nation stuff from the original war game. And also gonna have an army general mode. Yeah, we'll just have to see how it will do. I mean, we'll be able to play it on December 18th, January 20th, which is much sooner than expected. And that's pretty much a year. It's been a pretty busy one for Eugen Systems. There's been a whole heap of content which has been added to Steel Division 2. I mean, we're up to over 80, maybe 90 divisions now in the game. That's pretty ridiculous. This has probably been one of the most content-filled games. And also some of the new balance changes, such as the tank gun change rework and the LMG minimum range were definitely improvements. So I find it pretty funny because those were features or gameplay aspects which were in the original Steel Division. I wanted at this point in the video go into the core problems that were still in Steel Division 2, but frankly I don't want to do another 40-minute try raid as we did last year, so I think his Reddit post pretty much sums up the two core problems with the game, and frankly, I don't see these problems being fixed, especially with Warno around the corner, and these are such core problems, you essentially have to redo the game from scratch. But next year should be a very interesting one, especially if you're a Cold War game enthusiast, because we don't just have Warno being released, but Eugen Systems actually has a little bit of competition now going into next year. I mean, first off we have Regiments, which is a game I've actually managed to play in the few demos they've had over the year or two. And frankly, Regiments has been a fantastic game to play. If you've seen the gameplay on my channel or on other people's channels, such as Firestarter and Razman, it's a really well done game. It's a bit more like Road and Conflict and War Game, a bit more arcadey, but the controls are great. It's super easy to micro-unit, just everything's in platoons instead of individual squads, and the maps and the objectives are really well done, as well as just the entire regiment system of being able to add new units into your regiment in the middle of the match as reinforcements, so to speak. I really hope the game does well, and it should be coming out next year. It's been delayed a bunch. The one main problem with Regiments, however, which I think it's not going to be huge competition for Warno, it's not going to have multiplayer, unfortunately. Which, to be fair, it's a very small indie studio, it's their first game, they can only do so much, but I really hope Regiments does pick up some popularity, because it's one of the best RTS games I've actually played in recent years, and I wanted to see it do good so it could have a multiplayer mode, as I think, especially in like an esports competitive scene, it's a very good game, as is unlike War Game or Steel Division, there's not a whole lot going on. Everything, you know, you only have 6 to 12 units on the field at a time, really, so it's very easy to follow from a viewer's perspective. Then we have the elephant in the room, Broken Arrow, which I still find very funny at one of the big clans from War Game, as well as ex-Eugene Dev FLX, are essentially now making the main competition to, well, War Game, or Warno as we want to call it. We haven't seen too much of Broken Arrow. We have seen some gameplay and just some in-game footage, and from what I've seen so far and from what I've read, it's looking to shape up really well. It's a bit different time frame rise, as it's much more modern in setting, and for release it's really only going to be US vs Russia, but it does have some cool features such as a map/scenario editor, and also the ability to customize individual unit loadouts. It's looking really cool, and frankly, this is going to be the main competition for Warno next year, and well, Eugen Systems are going to have to innovate a bit if they want to be able to compete in this space, because Broken Arrow is coming up, and frankly, this competition is great. I'm so happy that there's finally other games which are being developed in kind of like this War Game Steel Division niche, as competition is a good thing for us, the consumer, because with competition, both companies, Eugen and the Broken Arrow devs, or Steel Palauka, are going to have to innovate and make really good games to compete with the other, and that just means we get a better product. So I am all happy for this competition. It also means there's a whole heap of content which I'm gonna want to be covering next year on my YouTube channel. I mean, Regiments coming out, Broken Arrow and Warno. I plan to cover all 3 games in some aspect. I don't know how yet, we'll just see how it goes, but I'm very excited for next year because of it. It's gonna be a great time to be a Cold War wargamer. Before we do sign off, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who supported tournaments over this year in the Wargame and Steel Division space. These tournaments give me replays, these replays allow me to cast, and casting gives me content to slap onto this channel. I also want to say thank you for Karnorok, who's joined me over, 4 years now in casting with me in Steel Division. I greatly appreciate your time and just casting with me. It's much more fun doing it with other people and doing it by myself. And I also want to say thank you to Graham, who's joined me over in the Wargame space for casting. He's been a great addition into that as well. I also want to say thank you to you. Yes, you, the person watching this video. I don't know your name, but thanks for watching, and if you've watched the previous videos as well. Next year's going to be pretty eventful for this channel, as I'm really planning to do a bit more content with all these new Cold War style games coming out. And it's pretty crazy, been doing this for so long. It's been over 8 years now, and we're going back to the Cold War. It always comes back around. Yeah, I guess in another 4 to 5 years we'll be back to World War II, and the cycle will continue. But, yeah. So guys, I highly recommend you get your coach on, because the Cold War is coming. This has been another Rangaroo video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a happy holidays, and as usual, please just take it easy.